My name is Greg Scher. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations. I want to thank you all for joining us for this evening's Alumni Speaker Series with TyKiah Wright. We're going to start off with a video, and then I'm going to introduce our host for tonight and our alumni speaker. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this just couple minute long video.
Hi, I am TyKiah Wright, and I am the founder of WrightChoice Incorporated. At the age of 3, I was diagnosed with Charcot-Marie Tooth condition, and it falls under the umbrella of muscular dystrophy. In a nutshell, CMT affects everything farthest from my brain, which are my hands and my feet. Over the years, the nerves in my hands and my feet began to die out. And it wasn't until 5th grade that I received the wheelchair to aid in my mobility. When I was in high school, that was the first time that I realized the power of writing down my goals and my dreams. At the top of the list was becoming a cheerleader. It was something that was deep in my heart, and I just had to accomplish that. Well, in the 11th grade, I became the first cheerleader in the city of Columbus to be in a wheelchair. From college, I began to formulate the idea and the vision for WrightChoice and helping young people, both minority students and students with disabilities alike, helping to prepare them for life after graduation. And one of the highlights early on in my career was getting the opportunity to appear on the Montel Williams show. They divided the prize up and gave each one of us $20,000. That was just another fuel to my fire to keep me going, to let me know that I was doing what I was called to do. Well, in August of 2013, out of the blue, I received a phone call from the White House. I had been nominated to be a commissioner for the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans. Our goal as a commission is to look at the education of our African American students, really from cradle to careers. We focus in on early learning. We focus on college access, how students transition in post-secondary. We also look at the involvement of parents throughout the continuum of a child's education. Part of the YWCA's mission is to eliminate racism, and that is certainly a part of what I do. Breaking down stereotypes, helping people to overcome barriers, not only physical barriers, but attitudinal barriers, is key to creating inclusion into our workforce. Our community will be so much stronger if we come together and embrace our uniqueness and celebrate our differences.
All right. That was a great video. I do want to introduce to you Quatez Scott, who is the Intercultural Specialist for the Belinga Center. I apologize. I
own a multi-million-dollar estate on the South Florida coast in one of America's most exclusive neighborhoods.
I had a video popping up ad in the background there. I'd like to introduce you to Quatez Scott, who's a new Intercultural Specialist for the Belinga Center. And he is going to be our moderator for the evening. So, Quatez, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you all very much. I was just checking to see if I had any videos playing in the background myself. I'm just kidding. So, thank you all for joining us here this evening. My name is Quatez Scott, and as Greg stated, I am the new Intercultural Specialist of the Belinga Black Cultural Resources Center. I began in the position on January 4th, so I always jokingly tell everyone, don't start a position in a cultural group that is where the celebration starts the next month. So it's been an interesting transition for myself. So I'm excited to be joining you all here today, but I'm also very excited to have this conversation with TyKiah, because the conversations that we have been having, just even outside of this circle, have been very tremendous. She is an amazing person, and I'm excited to hear all the things that she's going to be sharing with us here today. So the first question, as we start off this conversation, first off, I would like to let you all know that how we're going to format this conversation is that I'm going to have some questions for TyKiah, but if there's anything in particular that you all would like to ask, how we're going to format our Q&A is that it's not going to be positioned at the end of this discussion. It's going to be throughout the discussion. So as I am posing questions to TyKiah and we're having a conversation, feel free to post anything that you have to ask for TyKiah over in the chat box. Please make sure that the question is respectful and that we are just thoughtful in the questions and the things that we are considering posing to TyKiah or even myself. So with that being said, the first question that I have for you today, TyKiah, first off, welcome, is can you tell us about what attracted you to Wright State University as a student? And then also, more importantly, what kept you here? Oh, and you are muted, by the way. It's not a WebEx meeting if we don't say that at least once.
And that has happened to me twice today. So I think that is just kind of the norm for webinars and Zoom meetings nowadays. You do have to say it at least one time. So what attracted me to the university? As a high school student, I went on the college tours and, for me, all roads were leading to an HBCU, specifically one down south. And, I attended HBCU college tours twice in high school. But around my junior year of high school, a family friend introduced us to the idea of visiting Wright State University. And, my parents and I, scheduled a time to go and visit the campus. And I can honestly say, from the moment that I stepped foot on campus, I felt a sense of belonging. I knew that there was something about the campus right in that moment that really had my name written on it. And then maybe we can talk about some of the surface level reasons, right? It was just a modern campus. And the ones that I had visited, were kind of older. Well, Wright State was more modern because it's one of the youngest, it is the youngest for a university in the state. And of course, it had microwaves and voicemail. That was important. Refrigerators in the room. That was important for me as a naive high school student looking at college campuses. But when I really think about what sold me on the university, honestly, was the accessibility of the campus and really understanding that the university was a premier institution as related to their disability services and the program that they offered. So I would say that really is what attracted me to the university. But when you ask me what kept me here, honestly, what kept me here was the people and the lifelong friendships that I was making. And, in the moment, I didn't know it. And then I would say that the thing that also kept me there were all the many ways that I was able to spread my wings and really hone and develop my leadership skills.
Well, thank you. No pun intended with being able to spread your wings in the right
Right.
So I also, I kind of understand and feel what you're saying in terms of you made the choice to come here because of how modern the school was. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
I was also looking at HBCUs when I was coming out of high school. I would say the particular ones that I was looking at. But I will say that certainly factored into the decision in terms of why I made the decision to ultimately go to the school which I attended. And it was one of the things that I didn't attend Wright State, but I'm from Xenia, so very familiar with the area. And I remember just coming on campus for my interview. I interviewed for another position before ultimately accepting this one. And that was one of the things that really blew me away about the campus, was just recognizing how modern it is, and how accessible it is as well. So when you talk about belonging, can you talk a little bit about that as well? Because oftentimes we have the whole tunnel situation that is a highlight for a lot of different people. So can you talk about that in terms of the accessibility of the campus as well?
Yeah, when we think about accessibility and really removing structural barriers, Wright State was at the was and continues to be at the forefront of institutions that really create a campus and an environment where people with all types of disabilities can flourish. And whether it's from, the in-classroom academic side or, just being involved in campus life, student groups, organizations, that really um, was important and continues to be important to me and to others as they look for the right institution, no pun intended, for their child or themselves to continue their education. And I've always been a cheerleader and a champion for the institution over the years and making sure that people understood that, Wright State is a gym. Again, no pun intended, hidden in the gem city of Dayton, Ohio. But we truly are a gym that um, really taps into the full picture of diversity and making sure that the narrative of people and students with disabilities are included.
So this question is a little bit of a two-part, because I'm still a little bit fresh off of my bachelor's degree, but oftentimes it's interesting once you graduate and you kind of think about the things that you appreciated and that you learned while you were there.
Right.
And then the things you come to realize that you appreciated much more after you're gone, that you didn't necessarily think about. So I guess that could be a two-part. What are some of the things that you learned to appreciate about your time at Wright State while you were there, but that you appreciate even more now that you are an alum?
So the number one thing that, again, I did not fully appreciate it when I was there, like you said, but as I reflect on it, during my time at Wright State, during the first half of the years, the 6 years that I was there, I was really a part of history. And the class of students, we were really a part of history, and I don't think we recognized that. And I say that because we were under the administration of the first Black president to lead a state-funded institution in Ohio outside of an HBCU, and that was Dr. Harley Fleck. And again, I didn't really appreciate that until, until I became an adult. But I remember, move-in day, he was out there, helping students move in and really made himself visible on campus. So, and as a result, I sought out opportunities to connect with him. I had a chance to be a part of the President's Ambassadors Club. I remember being invited for fireside chats, at the house to talk about the climate of student life. But just that ultimate engagement um, is really something that is etched in my mind. It's something that I truly cherish and take away from my time at Wright State. And then, of course, the tunnels is something that, is on everybody's top 10 list. And I will also include the ability to get things like Pizza Hut and Burger King on campus as a part of that list as well.
It's funny that you just mentioned Pizza Hut, because I was telling my mom that so my office is in Gillette and it's connected to Allen Hall, and
Yeah.
going over to the cafeteria over there, then I realized that there was a Pizza Hut, and then it made me sad that I chose to go to the school that I did attend, because we didn't have Pizza Hut on campus.
Yeah, Wright State had a lot of little hidden nuggets there that attracted students to the university and they didn't even know it.
Yeah. So another question that I have for you, and all everyone, please feel free to add questions over in the chat box. I do see one that's over there right now. I'm going to pose a question on this list, and then I'll jump over to that question. But how did WSU prepare you for life after college?
Absolutely. So I attribute my time at Wright State um, to my success as an entrepreneur, as a community leader, as an advocate. I really believe that Wright State gave me the tools that I needed to become a confident leader, right? I was, and I jokingly say, I was involved in anything and everything that I can fit in a 24-hour period. And that really entailed leadership opportunities, student engagement. When I mentioned this kind of feeling like I belonged on campus, there really wasn't anything that I wanted to do that I did not have an opportunity to do. So my time on campus really fostered my leadership skills, and it helped me to really engage and really become the entrepreneur that I was after graduating. It gave me a sense of community connectedness, and it gave me the desire to give back to my community in ways that Wright State poured into me. So because I was involved in, leadership opportunities, whether it was sorority or student government, sitting on the budget review board, or being involved in um, the residential leadership programs, the African American Residential Caucus, or like I said, the President's Ambassadors Club. All of those opportunities just shaped me into being the leader, the confident leader that I am today. And I tell you the other thing that it did, it gave me again, the confidence to engage with senior leaders and senior executives and presidents of companies and members of C-suite, because I had full access to Dr. Flack then, and then other presidents, along the way. But I felt like I had full access to meet with the presidents, to share my concerns, to ultimately develop relationships and partnerships with them. So I left the university with this sense of boldness, and I would even say this sense of I had the right to um, to call a president of a company or someone that's in a C-suite leadership of a company and ask for a meeting. And I think that sense of boldness was planted at Wright State University, and that served me well in my career because as a leader, that's what I've had to do to build my business and to garner the relationships and the partnerships of Fortune 500, 100 companies.
No, that's pretty powerful because I certainly connect to that. When I was in my undergraduate program, I was also very involved as well, and I was an RA. I was the editor of the school paper for a couple years. I served on a couple different appeals committees, academic appeals, the judicial board, and I was also the student body president the year that we were going through a presidential search. So they usually tap one student to be the student representative, and that usually goes to the student body president. So being able to sit in those meetings and listen to how they all talk about, very, a lot of things. I had to sign an agreement that I wouldn't talk about.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so yeah, it was really cool to sit and partake in all of that. And I agree with what you said. It really gives you a sense of boldness, confidence when you're leaving, to know that you can sit at the table with a lot of those people, especially when you're a student of color. And this
Absolutely.
this really goes into the next question because the person asked a really great question, Lynette Hurd. Because one of the things we have to remember when you're a student leader is that a lot of your peers are really watching you and looking at everything that you're doing and seeing how you move. And what she states is, TyKiah, first, I remain so proud of you, and I am one of your biggest fans. You were an immediate role model for so many students on campus. Could you share how you mentored students then and how you are still doing so today? Much love always.
So I smiled from ear to ear as soon as I heard her name, because she was one of the persons who I spent a lot of time in her office at the leadership level. But again, Ms. Hurd was one of those individuals that I was able to develop that type of relationship with. So she helped in fostering that sense of boldness that I have today. Going to the mentoring question. Mentoring is a part of the fabric of my life. I believe in the statement that says you have to lift as you climb. So even when I graduated from Wright State and began to start my own company, I was lifting as I was climbing. So I was laying the foundation for the organization, but at the same time, I was still mentoring and providing students an opportunity to engage in internships and just showing them how to lead as an African American, and how to lead as a young professional at the time. And even though I do not have that branch or that part of the organization anymore, I still mentor. I just launched last year, which is RightChoice Mentoring, and I've created a space where I mentor and I get others in the career space, in the career world, to mentor students with all types of diverse abilities, as I like to say. And I bring them together for a virtual mentoring experience twice a year, once in the summer and once in the fall. Because I really believe in the power of impartation and helping students connecting students so that they become inspired to continue on their educational and then on into their career path. So mentoring is just a part of who I am, and I believe that I will continue to mentor until I can't anymore. Thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Shannon Griffin echoed what your sentiments about feeling visible at Wright State, and something that you just said really resonated with me as I just wrote that down, because both of us, work in the areas of diversity and inclusion, and you referred to not mentoring students with disabilities, but students with or individuals with diverse abilities. And I think that language is so important when we discuss a lot of those topics in our society, because oftentimes we other people without even the intention of doing that. So I think it's really important how we shape and how we reference those types of conversations. And that leads into our next question, which is you are an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can you talk a little bit about where this interest in these concepts began for you, and why that work is important to you?
Yeah, so for me, the root of the passion for advocacy, really came as a result of lived experiences, really fully embracing, all the intersections of who I am, right? I am an African American, I am a female, and I happen to have a disability. So I navigate this world with all three of those intersections. But the true passion for inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility was really born, and I can confidently say that it was born on the campus of Wright State University. And then so this is me looking from um, a individual, a personal lens, not a practitioner's lens. But for me, inclusion, I felt that I was fully included into the mainstream campus. I had full access to do and be and engage and in anything that I wanted to, whether that was leadership opportunities, whether that was taking bus trips, whether that was, um, included in the classroom and asking questions and feeling like I was visible, as Shannon said. So inclusion, and then I think about diversity. Um, I believe that Wright State represented the diversity of this world. And of course, being African American on a predominantly white campus, in the grand scope of things, the numbers of African Americans, were significantly low. But when we think about diversity, in its true representation, I think that Wright State was a beautiful picture of diversity. And, we had all Black ethnicities and races. And because I am an advocate for the inclusion of people with disabilities, to be able to visibly see people with disabilities freely navigating the campus and feeling included, to me, was what diversity is all about. And then equity, equity is about fairness and about allowing people to get what they need to become successful. And I received that at Wright State, from education, from the services and disability services provided. I received, I believe, what was an equitable and fair education at the university. And then accessibility, Wright State made it their mission to remove barriers to inclusion, so that we could freely navigate and be a part of the community to its fullest. So that's where the foundation for me and the passion for the advocacy in this space really was born.
I really appreciate one of the things that you said in there about it was a personal thing for you, because I think oftentimes that kind of gets lost in translation, especially when we're looking at um, the energy in which a lot of people bring to the work. Sometimes it can be it's not necessarily misguided. I think it's misunderstood oftentimes when we see people that do the work who bring a certain type of energy to it, because it's such a personal endeavor, because it's not just about changing certain things for you, but it's for changing certain things for people that also look like you,
Right.
who are also experiencing those things as well. And we talked about that a little bit earlier on the phone. There's two words. There's one word that has another word inside of it. There's the word courage, but then there's also rage inside of it. and oftentimes, you see the people who are really upset about things that are going on, that have the courage to step up and also do something about it. And I think those things are really important to take into consideration as well. And I really appreciate it that you mentioned that equity is about fairness. Like it's about making. So my degree right now that I'm focusing on, there's a philosophical aspect of it, and the philosophical aspect that I've been doing a lot of work in focuses on what fairness is. And I tell people all the time that if you look at things in terms of how it's personally going to affect you, you will never really understand how it's going to benefit everyone in general.
Correct.
And that's what it's all about. So I appreciate you stating that. I definitely echo that. And as someone who's now working for Wright State, I do agree with the sentiment about the access and removing barriers. I'm now on about 5 committees at this point. So, and each of them has been focusing on racial equity policies within the institution, recruitment and retention. Wright State has been definitely doing its due diligence since I've been working here and before I've gotten here, to make sure that we're removing all of those barriers as much as we possibly can. So, that's something that I appreciate hearing from you. So as a reminder to everyone, please place any questions that you have inside of the chat box as we get through this, this discussion. I want to make sure that I ask as many questions as we possibly can. So the next piece is where I'm jealous of you, because you got to work on President Obama's commission on educational excellence for African Americans. And inside of that video, I heard that you got a phone call asking you about your interest with all of that. So I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, I can only imagine just sitting here having a conversation, and then President Biden's administration calls me and asks if I was interested in that.
Yeah, and I was that shocked when I received the phone call. But I remember it like it was yesterday. It was in August of 2014, and I thought it was a prank call actually, because they actually asked me for my social security number over the phone, and that was kind of raised a red flag to me. But then I asked them, to send a follow-up email with all the details, and they did. And then thus it began to sink in, it became real, and once saw the security clearance process was underway, it really became real. But that was an opportunity for again that I believe that Wright State prepared me for. Right, when I talk about being confident and being in a room with leaders, I don't think that I would have been able to do that had I not experienced um, all of those leadership opportunities at Wright State. But yeah, it was an opportunity. It was one of the commissions, one of the last commissions that was formed under the Obama administration. And, we really came together to really take a deep look at the education pathways and really from cradle to career for our African American students. And I was able to serve as a voice for our African American students with disabilities as well. So the experience was, something that I will always treasure. And I believe that we did a lot of great work as we kind of toured the country and, really collected best practices across the country as it relates to K through 12, higher ed, as well as in the disability space. So yeah, that I would say that would go on my top list of opportunities and accomplishments being in the entrepreneurial space that I was in for 15 years.
And going off of that, just a little bit more with working on President Obama's commission and everything. Oftentimes when we talk about service back to the country, we often think about the military, but that's providing a service to our country, and you're impacting millions of not just children but families across the country.
Absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about just the honor and privilege that I guess the weight of that experience that you carried with you in terms of working in that position?
Yeah, I would say the weight was heavy because you knew that our African American students were, affected disproportionately with their educational outcomes. So, the committee that I was a part of really took a look at, what were some of the best practices, that we can uncover and then begin to share, across the country and in different areas. Um, even as we think about the intersections, right? So we took a dive and looked at, the the um, the presence of African American LGBTQ students, and how the educational system um, supported those students, or and many times the lack thereof. Our fearless leader was a gentleman by the name of David Johns, and he was unapologetically Black and unapologetically for the success of Black students. So the weight was heavy, but it was a true honor to be at the table with leaders in the space. I always um, smile when I think about being on this commission and being on the commission with the mother of early childhood education, and that was Mrs. Corner, and um, she is the mother of, her name is escaping me. She served in the Obama administration. Um, I have to look it up. But she was like 80 plus years old, and she was the mother and author of early childhood education. So being able to not only serve with, but also learn from her. So it was an amazing experience, one that I will always treasure.
So as we think a little bit more about the climate that we're in, so this is kind of hopping back to some of the diversity and equity related things. What would you consider to be some of the biggest needs that our country needs right now as we look through it through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
I think our country really needs to really address the underlying tones of something that has been around for more than 400 years, and that's racism. And I think that, just looking at our current climate, that's one of the biggest challenges. I think, for many reasons, it's been, there's been an awakening of something that has always existed. Um, People have feel that people feel emboldened to, I guess, walk in, I guess, what is their truth around racism. But when you think about, the police brutality and the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and here in Columbus, Ohio, Casey Goodson, um, and just the recent issue of the insurrection at the Capitol, the underlying tone is really racism. And I think that our country needs to just really experience a deep healing, and that would be um, 400 years of something that has affected um, has affected generations of people. So I think that that really is where a lot of our challenges lie today.
And it's very timely that you say that racism, because my dissertation that I'm working on right now is focused on anti-racist centers in higher education and the work that they're doing. And I would certainly agree with that. One of the frameworks that I love to look at a lot of issues through is Paulo Freire's critical consciousness, because there's three elements of it that are really important. And one is reflection and being able to in-depthly understand the things that are going on in society and to challenge our own understanding of the things that are going on in society. And I think that a lot of people, as you stated, are having this now awakening moment to the things that are going on. And now they're trying to identify what it is that they can personally do about those things. The second piece of that is the efficacy piece of it and the belief that those things can change and that the conditions of our society can change, and that one personally has the potential to play a role in those things changing as well, which leads to that last piece, which is action. So I think a lot of it is certainly about understanding that racism exists, understanding that racism impacts almost every experience in America. But then also understanding that we all have a responsibility in doing something about that. One of my favorite authors that I read recently, Bell Hooks, she stated very pointedly in her book Killing Rage that if one, especially as a person of color, as a Black person particularly, she stated that if we become complicit, if we don't do anything about racism, and if we don't do anything about dismantling it, we become complicit in our own demise, essentially. And I thought that that was so powerful to say that, because it's one of those things where, like, how can you read that and then just choose to ignore what's going on in society? And I think that goes back to that personal piece that we talked about earlier. So, being, taking it as a personal endeavor, recognizing that it's something that not only impacts you, but it impacts other people as well. That's
Absolutely
a part of it. So going back to the work that you all did under President Obama's commission, how did you all work toward making sure that you were addressing the issue of racism through that work?
Making sure that we listened to the community, and we always encouraged young people and gave them a spot at the space at the table. One of the ways that I appreciated, we would hold listening sessions across college campuses to really understand what was on the minds of African American students. And then we would kind of take that information back and share with the team as a whole, and then really think about where can we begin to identify some best practices and what resources can we send to that area to really begin to alleviate some of the concerns. So making sure that students have agency and that they felt that they were a part of the solution was one of the ways. We even hosted conferences for young students in K through 12. Again, bringing together a group of students, allowing them to share and be vocal about what they experienced, and helping us to understand how we can serve them. Our leader was very, very adamant about ensuring that what we do and the way that we moved was fostered by the input of all of the young people. So we always made sure that we gave the students space and made them feel that their voices were heard at every level.
So it's also very clear that you do amazing work. But we also know that, people that do great work can't also pour from empty cups. So when it comes to you, what are some things that you do for self-care to make sure that you're not, exhausted, or that you're always just pouring from an empty cup?
That is a great question, because I am a true advocate of self-care. For me, self-care looks like turning the computer off, turning the iPad off, and many times turning the cell phone off, and really engaging myself with my family. My family means everything to me. And, I have three nieces, who are just growing up before my eyes. But I am very intentional about showing up in their lives and making sure that I am present at every, at every turn. So that part right there is very important to me, and I believe kind of is a foundation for me in self-care. I am a very spiritual person, so I always have to find time to read the Word and to really center myself, because doing this work, and you can really become stressed, or you can go so much and give all that you have to the point where you're burnt out. And I really have to center myself and know that my source and all of my help comes from the Lord. So, and then always I throw in some retail therapy. That's always important as it relates to self-care for me. And I love to travel, of course, with the presence of the pandemic, I have not been able to travel like I typically like to. But once this blows over, I want to get back to traveling. So for me, that's how I engage in self-care.
Yeah, thank you. And before we get out of here, because we have about a few minutes that are left, so if anyone has any burning questions that you would like to ask TyKiah, feel free to go ahead and place those over in the chat box. So I will say I'm a little bit biased, because my first position after graduating from college, I worked in our university advancement office, which also worked with alumni as well. And I always have an affinity for working with alumni relations and alumni offices and participating even as an alum and giving back as much as I possibly can, whether or not that's time, that's talent, or any treasures that I have to offer. But can you share a little bit about why it's so important for you to stay as just as connected as an alumni as you were as a student, and why other people should also consider that as well?
Absolutely, because we always have to remember that the students on campus, that we were there at one point in time, so they need mentors, they need individuals to help them understand what the world looks like, outside of, their protected walls of the university. So I've always given back to the university by continuing to engage students, specifically in mentoring and when I led the internship program, connecting students to internship opportunities. And it's important because I believe that too much is given, much is required. And I said it earlier, I am who I am because of the education that I received at Wright State University. And I always love to, include, that it's my name. So I have more of a duty to support my namesake. So I will always give back. And it's also important to give back financially to the institution, that gave you your education as well. So I continue to support the university financially as I can, but more importantly, through my time, my treasure, and my talents.
Well, thank you very much. And the last question that I have to ask, since we don't have anything over in the chat box, is, it's the way I frame it is that I used to, one question just popped up. All right. So from Shannon Griffin, she knew it was getting ready to get out of here. How would you encourage WSU right now, given some of the difficulties the university is currently facing? So I would imagine, how would you encourage WSU right now in terms of what would you say to the university? Is what I'm guessing that question is stating? How would you encourage the university?
Yeah. Is it how would I encourage the university or how would I encourage the students?
How would you encourage the university? I would imagine the administrators, the individuals making all of the difficult decisions.
Okay. So, and this may be, too much of a simplistic answer. You know, we all go through tough times and challenges, but many of us can look back and see that, we weathered the storm of many challenges. When you know that you have the appropriate leadership in place and, that things, sometimes you just have to let, situations play out. Unfortunately, we're in the midst of a pandemic, which is causing many universities to be challenged. And one of my mottos really is just to trust the process. Whether it's life, whether it's in business, we always have ups and downs and hills and valleys. But we know that if we stay the course, we will weather the storm. And in my life overall, I've faced, deciding to close, a business or a nonprofit organization that did so much great work for 15 years and impacted the community and changed so many lives. And that was a huge decision that I made. And then, later down the road, I transitioned into the corporate America and spent 3 years there just to be laid off, and laid off for 2 years, almost 2 years. And then, in the midst of that, I've lost loved ones. And, sometimes I didn't know, whether I was coming or whether I was going. But then, I landed this new role that I have at the National Diversity Council. And, just within the recent month, I just kind of sat back and realized that through that, through the ups and downs and through sometimes frustrating nights, I needed to trust the process because all plays out in the end. So whether you are university officials, a part of the administration, a part of the leadership, faculty, staff, or even students, these are tough times that we're going through. But I promise you, you will weather the storm if you stay the course and just trust the process.
Well, thank you so much. My last question was going to be if you could leave us with one piece of advice, but I think you just left it. We're going to weather the storm. It's to trust the process. So, I really appreciate that. So, I want to, on behalf of the entire Wright State University, I want to thank you and the Alumni Relations as well as the Belinga Black Cultural Resources Center. Certainly want to thank you for spending this hour here with us and spending your time and your talent with us, and then lending us some great advice. If anyone is interested in giving back to the university, feel free to go over to the Alumni Relations page and give there. If you are interested in events or anything else that's going on with the Belinga Center, you can feel free to reach out to myself or visit our page. Other than that, that will conclude our time here this evening. It's always interesting kind of like wrapping this all up because it's in a virtual space.
Right. No hand claps or loud music.
No, there was no one playing off any music or anything. But you have some folks over in the chat box. I don't know if you can see, but they're saying thank you, TyKiah, for your time tonight, talking about your great work. Other individuals, Brooke Rapella states, we've got some awesome events coming up at wrightstatealumni.com/events. So feel free to go and visit that page. Tanya Mathis states, TyKiah, great conversation. Thank you for sharing with us. And she also said,
I unmuted so we could hear some applause. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And your friend Lynette M. Hurd states, what a wonderful hour spent with everyone and a great dialogue and presentation. So proud. Keep up the great work. And then thank you. Great job, TyKiah. So proud of you. So thank you all very much for the kind words. Thank you very much again, TyKiah, for spending this hour with us. And we certainly look forward to inviting you back for other conversations and other opportunities to connect with alums, individuals at the university, as well as students too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, everyone, and then have a great night.